All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of A Desire to Inspire. You can see the background of me. I got the beautiful Atlantic Ocean down here in Miami. And on the other end, I got my man, Lars Munson, coming up to me from New York, right? New York today?
New York City.
My man, I heard you guys just got smacked with a blizzard.
Yeah, I'm staring at about 9 inches of snow in Soho in Manhattan. So it gums up the works in a city with this much density.
It worked out perfectly. It's hard to get a man like you to take the time to sit down for a podcast interview. So the snowstorm came by at the right time.
Correct.
And it's all working out, man. It's so good to have you on the show, brother. I really appreciate it. And so I always like to kick off the start of the podcast with the question of, who is Lars Munson and where did you come from? Where did this whole journey begin for you? And kind of give us the runaround on that story.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a small college town in North Carolina called Chapel Hill. And my father ran the hospital there. And I ended up attending UNC Chapel Hill, 5 miles from the house where I grew up, where I studied economics and finance. And as a kid of the 80s, I always had an interest in the markets and investing. I was at an impressionable age when the LVOs of the 80s were happening and Henry Kravis was buying RJR and the Masters of the Universe were going on. And so I kind of got caught up in that and just at least emotionally, and I always had an inherent interest in investing. So after school, I went to New York and one thing led to another, and I got into the investing career track. But I consider myself a Southern guy, a small town guy, public school educated. I'm happy to do these calls because I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and I think, I spend a fair amount of time with your competitor, Tim Ferriss, listening to his podcast. And I'm always curious to hear what other smart people have to say about, success and life and meaning. So I guess that's an introduction.
That's great, man. One thing about you, and I'll kind of give the listeners that are tuning into this the background. We met years ago when I was working in the nightlife business back in Vegas. Right. And, I approached you about talking about business. I was like this young punk that didn't know what he was doing. He was trying to figure life out. And here you were, finance guy, money raising guy. And we sat down and we stayed in touch for several years. Not as frequently as one might would think, but you've always been the down-to-earth dude, man. And I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you for that. That's been the one constant thread in that. And so, it sounds like you really were able to dial in on a vision pretty early on, right? And that was becoming a finance guy. And
I had sort of the general headline of kind of what I wanted to do, but as it happens in life, the details and the specifics, unfolded over a period of time. But I had a general sort of impulse that investing was an area that turned me on. And so I followed up on that. And one thing led to another. I ended up being a sell-side equity research analyst at Morgan Stanley for a period of time. That's a job where you're researching companies and publishing investment advice on the stocks that are related to those companies. And then I eventually got into what they call the buy side of the industry, where I joined a fund, alternative asset firm. And our job was to take other people's money and invest it in stocks. So that's where I've been for the last 18 years, first with a big firm called Pequot Capital. And then I launched a company in 2009, a 2-man partnership, which was a smaller version of the same thing.
So at this point, considering all your success, what motivates you and what drives you to keep pushing yourself forward and reach new pinnacles and new heights in your professional career?
Yeah. Well, it's a timely question because if we were having this conversation this time a year ago, I have no idea. This time a year ago, I was feeling complacent, kind of burned out, and physically tired, and not sure what I was supposed to be doing. So I mentioned to you that I took a sabbatical. My decision was, I have a partner, and I'm going to let him run the business. I'm going to unplug from work and from smartphones and from emails and from 10 million people on the island of Manhattan, and I'm going to go somewhere else and read and think and get in shape and try and plan the next phase. So, I guess the lesson in that is that sometimes you don't know. It's hard to identify what motivates you after a good run of success. And my my solution was to just really change up my environment, to give my mind some room to think and really empty out and sort of restart. Since that time, I figured out what I want to do. And I think I'm in the process now of starting a new business, a new investment firm. And what motivates me to do that is just the concept of ownership. When I launched this current fund in 2009 with my partner, I was a minority owner, but an owner nonetheless. And I think what turns me on at this point, among other things, is the idea of owning it in total myself and really having it be on my shoulders and having it be sort of my baby, and sinking or swimming based on what I do. So I'm interested in entrepreneurial and the idea of ownership. I'm interested in the idea of starting something fresh. And this gets to one of the things. I was listening to your podcast with Reid, and I think that in business in general, certainly in the investment world in particular, we are generally pretty good at describing to people what it is we do and how we do it. I think people in general, and certainly in my industry, are very bad at understanding why they do what they do. And so as part of the sabbatical process, I tried to figure out, okay, so I like investing. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start something, but why am I doing this? And for me, it comes down to a couple of things. But my point is, before I get into what it is for me, I think in general, your listeners should appreciate that. I think it's beneficial at every stage of one's career to really take physical time out. Doesn't have to be a 6-week or 8 or 10-week sabbatical, but it could be 6 hours on a Sunday to just think through why you're doing something. And it's amazing what comes to your mind when you actually give yourself time to think that through. For me, it's 3 things. It's number one, I have investors who, if I make their money grow into more money, they can do good things with it, fund college scholarships and create jobs in their business. So there's a trickle-down benefit if our investors do well, and that's a noble calling. I think for me too, there's an aspect related to my Christian faith, which is the more money I make is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. In the sense that the more I make, the more I can give away. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, there's just a general concept that work is noble and work is dignified. I think we are happiest and healthiest and most productive and most compassionate when we're gainfully employed and have something to do every day that we're excited about. So there's an ability in work. There's a Christian aspect for me, and there's a beneficiary to our clients, which helps down the road. But regardless of what it is for your listeners, I think it's important to take time out on a regular and frequent basis to think through why you're doing something.
Sure. And I think to add on to that as well, and I have this conversation with quite a few people, it's not just about why. I feel like the why is great, and I love that. Simon Sinek is the why guy, right? And in this business, if you know Simon Sinek, he's the why. And I like to bring it down a layer, and I like to say, who are you, right? Yeah. And like you just said, you took a 3-month sabbatical to go out to figure out who you were, right? What that reinvention was going to be like for you so that you could embark on this new path and on this new journey. Right. It sounds like you've found out some great stuff about yourself. And so I like to stress that more than anything. Listen, we could be living an inauthentic life. I like to call it the fictional self, and be working with a why that's not right. That's not the right one. So it takes a really bold person, a courageous person to figure out what their personal truth is, to go back to figure out who they are so they can remember that that's the life that they want to live. And so,
well, and the other thing about the why that I think is important is, I've been on Wall Street since 1996, and it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of pressure, it's a rat race it's the ultimate rat race in some ways. Physically, you're commuting, you're in a concentrated town, it's a lot going on. And so Wall Street is a cesspool in the sense that we early in our careers never think about why. It's all about a paycheck, period, end of statement. Right. And one of my lessons, I think I knew this well before my sabbatical, but it was certainly driven home as a revelation, as a result of my sabbatical, is if you're doing it just to get rich, getting rich and making money is not a bad goal as far as it goes, but it doesn't get you to the end, and it certainly will not sustain you. And my belief is it tends to not sustain us when times get rocky, when you're facing adversity, or when you reach a complacency phase where you're kind of flatlining. just merely making money is simply not going to cut it as a motivating factor. And I have a lot of sort of mentors and legends in the investment industry who I've studied. And I will tell you, among other common threads, it's maybe early in their careers about getting a paycheck, but when they were in the flourishing phases of their career, they flourished because the money simply became a way to keep score. It was not an end in and of itself. It was sort of a byproduct of a career well spent. And I really believe that the money can color our choices of career, and it can act as a sort of a false fuel for motivation in the short term, but it is not enough, I think, to sustain us long term.
Sure. And they say that obviously, if there's a big noticeable difference between somebody that makes basically $1,000 a year and $5,000 a year to the $50,000 a year milestone. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Anything over 50, once your basic needs are met, everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about needs, and you said it perfectly. I think that some of these people that we've watched, that we've heard about, that have all the money in the world, figure out that there's a sense of identity that's missing, and because of it, they figure out what they can do to be of more service or contribute more, which is awesome. And so I want to ask you this question, man, because of your recent discovery and in this transition phase that you're in and building a new business. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned from running the old asset management firm that you're going to take with you to now build and develop this new company that you're going to be launching here?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of good that we put in place with my current firm that we started in 2009 that I will hopefully bring with me. And there are some lessons that I'll do differently going forward. I think on the good, most of what we did right starting the firm in 2009 relates to sort of inside baseball investment finance strategy, geeky stuff, which is not that portable to most of your listeners. But basically, strategically, we had a clear vision about what we were trying to do. And as I said earlier, we are different than most people. We're very good at describing what we do and how we do it. And so articulating mission of the business, what we do, how we do it, in some cases in written form, not only helps clarify our thinking, but the troops. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. And so I think one of the things I'll take with me is having a clearly defined mission statement. What is it we're trying to do? How are we going to do it? Not surprisingly, you might guess that I do want to think better about motivating the troops, also about why we're doing it. So I've been thinking about a Jerry Maguire style mission statement that includes a feature about why. So one thing I'll do differently is explain the why better. I think I'm going to think differently about motivating and compensating people. Ours industry investing is the ultimate meritocracy. If you make $1, you get paid point X. If you don't make any money, you don't get paid. So it's very easy to get a grade on how you're doing and how productive you've been in our industry. It's a real meritocracy. But I think that we are bad in our industry at talent evaluation and at clarifying compensation models for people. So I want to be better about and more thoughtful about talent evaluation, retention of people, and how you compensate them. And for me, that's going to involve, again, explaining what it is we're doing, how we're doing it, and being more thoughtful about, does this person that I'm hiring fit into that model or not? And then once I find that person, being much clearer than we've been in the past on how they're going to be compensated.
Right.
I'm going to have to bring in some help for that because it's not a natural skill that I have. I know that I have a blind spot in this area. So I'm going to invest in some people that are good at this to help me with that. And that's another thing I'm going to do differently is I know what I don't know. And so I'm going to have to invest in that in the form of people to help me.
Well, by the way, what a great point. And I want people that are listening to this to understand that you, considering the success that you've had in what you're doing, admitting to your weaknesses, so to say, right here, live, on camera, via audio, is one of the skills that I think make a great leader, right? And my mentor, Bill Walsh, he says it like this. He's like, if you don't have a vision, then any path will do, right? And if any path will do, no path will get you to the right place. And he says, if you don't know what your vision, your mission is, he goes, you're confused. Not to mention you're confused, but your customers are confused. How in the world do they know what to expect if you don't even know what that is? So I thought that was a great point. And so what to your mention earlier, successful, success is such a subjective term, right? I mean, it can mean one thing to one person, another thing to another person. In your definition, what is your definition of success? Let's just say in general, and then what it means to you personally.
Yeah. Well, success to me involves some vague concept of liberty, basically freedom to kind of do what you want to do. And I don't mean go goof off on the beach, although if that's what you want to do, that's part of it. But it just means liberty to basically to do what you want to do professionally and to do what you want to do with your leisure time and to strike a balance that works for you. Now, in my early days on Wall Street, I had no life balance. And for me, life balance may not be a goal for some people. For me, it was. And I was certainly not successful early on because, as evidenced by the fact that my life balance was not where I wanted it to be. So one measure of success is you've made enough, you have enough resources and enough liberty and freedom to strike the kind of life balance that works for you. Now, for some people, like, I guess from what I'm reading, Donald Trump, for example, and some of the guys I know on Wall Street for that matter, it's really all about work, and life balance is a 90-10 thing, and that's fine. For other people, it might be more even split. I know for me, whatever the split was, I wasn't in benefiting from that in the early days of my career. So as a result, I would not have considered myself successful. Even though I was making cash money, I wasn't successful. So successful to me is basically liberty and freedom and independence to do what you want to do, whether work a lot or play a lot or some blend thereof. And then on the personal level, I just think, being in loving relationships with a service mindset where you're surrounded by people that you love and you can have a chance to serve. Again, that means different things for different people. For some, it could be me married with kids. For others, it could be just a handful of very deep friendships or closeness with your nuclear family. But regardless of what it is, I think success to me in the personal life is having those relationships around you.
Right. Lars, let me ask you this, man. Who's been the most influential person in your life?
Well, I had 3 mentors, and I have a lot of thoughts about mentoring. I mean, that word comes up on your podcast a lot, and I listen to a couple of them, and it's a common thing. I guess what I would add to the discussion on mentoring is I think Greg talked about having he had a group around him.
Multiple mentors.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's nice. I think that at a minimum, though, having one really invested mentor can do the trick. And it's a person whose skills you respect, whose success you might want to emulate, but who, for whatever reason, has a vested interest in you. Has almost an emotional interest in you. And if you get one guy like that, to me, that can be as good as his mastermind group, he called it. And I had 3 of those, luckily. And my idea is that physically being around them, learning through osmosis, and keeping a running list of questions and observations that you want to dive into. And basically in a batch process approach, when the time is right, I did it once a week on Fridays, ask for an hour of their time to go through those questions, observations, sort of once a week on a regular, infrequent basis. So you're not taxing their time, and you can have a coherent, condensed, intense conversation for an hour a week, kind of reflecting on the last week with that mentor. So I had 3 of those. I had one at Morgan Stanley. My boss was a senior analyst there who taught me most of what I know about securities analysis and accounting. And then the guy that hired me in 2000 to be an investor, Art Sandberg, I would consider my second mentor. And he that was a really more of a learn through osmosis. So physically just being around him and going into sponge mode and trying to soak it all in. You learn so many things, some conscious observations, but some of the best stuff you learn is sort of a subconscious observation that sinks into your psyche, and then 5 years later you realize it when the time calls to pull that out. So it gets one of my main lessons for young people. I really think that I really believe that half of life, particularly half of business life, is just showing up, physically being on the scene, whatever your scene is. Now, some of that may be colored by my experience in New York, where there are 10 million people on an island, and it swells to 13 million during the commuting workday, otherwise known as a very densely populated area. But I am here to tell you that physically just showing up on this island starts to open up doors for you in terms of networking and meeting people and physically having encounters that you wouldn't if you weren't in town. And then once you get into an office setting, just physically being around people, I really believe through osmosis you can learn a lot. So half of life, I really believe, is deciding what it is we want to do, and then physically finding a way to show up on the scene and being physically there, good things tend to come from that.
So let me ask you this question, bud. One, you said deciding what you want to do. So how would you encourage somebody to figure out what that is, or what would be the process in that? And then two, how do you show up? I mean, what comes to your mind when you say that? Like, how can the person that's sitting back right now saying, damn, I don't know what to do. Like, I hear this great stuff, but I'm stuck, right? What do I do?
It's a great point. On the deciding what you want to do, when I was thinking about this podcast the other day, I came across a commencement address that Mike Rowe, the actor, did for Prager University, and I think Greg may have tangentially touched on this idea as well. And he said his basic view is that following your passion is bad advice. He basically said if your passion is to be an NBA player or to be, a finance wizard, and you just don't have that ability, you should have realistic goals. And the positive way he says it is, don't follow your passion, but always bring it with you. So, and then I'll get to your question on how you decide you want to do, but I'm saying once you've sort of got on a path, I don't think being passionate about it is necessarily required. I think you can develop that over time, but it certainly is bringing your passion with you just for hard work and for energetic output is good advice. But what I did was reading. I mean, the other advice I have for your listeners is you have to read until your head hurts. And this goes for high school kids, college kids, and everyone, and every age, even after post-student, even when your career is established. I remember reading everything I could get my hands on about basically everything. I happen to be business heavy, so I was diving into investment literature. But I encourage people to read 5 newspapers a day. I encourage them to read a book a week if they can pull it off, and just cast a wide net and let your observations of people and industries and the world sort of just wash over you. And from that, I think things just happen. So for me, I kind of have an inkling early on, and the more I read, the more it made sense to me. But I would just encourage readers to cast a wide net, to study liberal arts in college, and see what turns them on, and then and then follow up on that. For me, I'll just let you know, how do I get involved? I mean, I remember vividly when I decided I wanted to be on Wall Street. I was a freshman in college, and the question is, how do you get up there? And I started cold calling and cold emailing alumni from my school, describing my story and saying, I'm willing to work for free. I'm willing to come up there. And I finally got lucky, caught lightning in a bottle, and found a guy who was going to take a chance on me as long as I was willing to work for free. So again, under the argument of just showing up, I physically drove a small U-Haul up to New York in the summer of '93 and physically walked into his office, and there I am. Now, he wasn't paying me, so the routine was work from him from 7 to 6, and then go to the Greek diner down the street and change clothes in the parking lot and wait tables to make the bills, pay the bills. And I think what I'm telling people is, if you get passionate or excited about a sector or a career path, you got to find a way to physically get on the scene and start to meet people. And if that means taking an extra dime to pay for it and raising your hand saying, I will work for free, then that's me. So I think it's an effective way to get someone's attention by telling them, I don't need you to pay me. And it's not easy, but it's a way to differentiate yourself from the crowd.
Right. It's the whatever it takes mentality.
Yeah, exactly right. And again, I look at the lessons I learned during that internship on Wall Street summer of my sophomore year, and those were very valuable to giving me havocabulary and an experience I could talk to in subsequent interviews. It sort of snowballs from there. So all it takes is one initial opportunity to get your foot in the door and to physically be around people. And I just believe that things unfold from there. And by the way, none of this is to say that luck isn't a factor. I mean, I think we should all recognize that, luck plays a role in everybody's story to one degree or another. I just think there are ways you can make your luck. That makes sense. There's ways you can sort of increase the likelihood that something good's going to happen.
Well, the harder you work, the luckier you get, man. You create the opportunities for yourself, man. You put yourself in a position because you're prepared, and your awareness is open to the opportunity. And so while most people think it's luck, you're thinking to yourself, damn it, no, I've worked my butt off to get to this point. It's just me recognizing the opportunity and going with it.
Yeah, I want to just clarify one thing on this follow your passion concept. At the risk, I don't want you to think I'm speaking on both sides of my mouth here. I do think it's fair to, if you get excited about a topic or a sector or a field or a calling, I think it's great to throw yourself into that. I think what Mike Rowe is trying to articulate is, and the way I would say it is, I think it's important to, as you throw yourself into a field that you apparently have an incipient passion for, it makes sense to sort of check in with yourself and check in with your progress on a very regular and frequent basis, just to gauge the degree to which your skill set and disposition are either marrying up to the opportunity or are diverging. So it's fine at the outset to sort of winnow down a big world of lots of career paths, pick a few that you're excited about. That's fine. But I just think at regular intervals, you got to check in with yourself to see, am I really cut out for this or not?
Right.
And if anything, what you're passionate about should be considered alongside what the opportunities are in the world. So if you identify an opportunity, to me, that's as appealing of a career path as something you're passionate about. And so opportunity really is where the action is. And I think that should be weighed alongside passion. That's all.
No, that's some great points too. You know, each journey is, each person's journey is their own. And I like to tell people this too, like, go with what feels right. And if that's the guiding light, and you go and you do it and it doesn't work, go with the next thing that feels right? And then keep following those internal feelings that give you hope or belief.
Yeah.
And finally, if you keep following it, because only you know what that feels like, man. I can't stress that enough. You know what feels right. You know what doesn't.
That's
do
right.
what feels right. Try it out.
Yep.
Fail forward. Fall on your face. Get back up and go try something else, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a big deal. It's such a big deal. And for the reading thing too, you mentioned, you know, if we could stop looking at reading as being a chore, like it's damn hard work, and realize that it's an opportunity to grow. I was having this conversation last night at dinner with my family, and we were talking about the impact of books. Like you just said, you get the brightest minds in the world. I'm talking every single one of them have wrote a book. Everything that they know about life, what they've done, their process, their system is in that book. And you don't have to necessarily go chase them down in New York or in LA, wherever that is, to find out. You can get the access to the information right there and start to pave your way.
Yeah, I will just say, at the risk of getting a little touchy-feely, one of the things I noticed on my sabbatical, so when I got to Belize, where I lived for 2 months, I physically took my work email server off of my phone, and I didn't check email or text for 40 days.
Wow.
And one of the things I feel very strongly about for your listeners is this concept of neuroplasticity, i.e. the brain is a muscle that can be trained to operate in one way or the other, is powerful. And the ubiquity of smartphones, I think, collectively is having an effect that is retraining our brain to respond to short bursts of stimuli, 140 characters in Twitter, this email, that email, and it's rewiring our brain to be very good at that, at the expense of getting narrow and deep into a topic, aka reading. And I noticed about 10 days after I went without email and without that constant stimuli of hunching over my smartphone, I noticed my brain almost physically worked better. I could concentrate. I could sit there for 4 hours and crush books. My thoughts were more fully formed, and I was more inquisitive. I was asking the right questions. By the way, I was sleeping better. My digestion got better. Those are separate benefits. But I think the point is that be very aware of your smartphone. And I just think reading is one reason why it's viewed as a chore is because our brains have been rewired with these smartphones. So that's why I'm an advocate of having physical books, not ebooks, and reading physical newspapers. Is I start my day with 5 newspapers, the physical form. And I also have a library full of physical books. I think it's a way to kind of get offline. And if you have the physical book, you can see how the author wanted to lay it out physically in the first place. It's easy to make notes in the margin. It's easy to refer back to things, and it also gets you away from your smartphone. Those are all reasons why I recommend reading physical media as opposed to on your phone.
Of course, I know several people that prefer to do it digitally, and I'm like, no. Do it the old school way. Do it the old school way.
And by the way, I want to grab something for you. Hold on one second.
Yeah, please.
On this topic of reading being a chore, there is this sounds kind of funny, but there is a book about how to read.
Okay.
And actually, I think that if I were a college dean, I would require every incoming freshman to read this book and pass a test on it. Because I feel so strongly about reading as a foundation for everything. And I think you're right. We view reading as a chore. So there is a book called, it's by Mortimer Adler, Adler, called How to Read a Book. And it offers this sort of Socratic approach to reading. Now, he's talking primarily about nonfiction, about how to sort of attack a book and get a lot out of it, and also just get through it. So I would recommend that book to your readers as something that either they can read or give to their kids.
Well, dude, that's a great resource, man. Thank you so much for pointing that out, brother. Yeah. You're kicking butt so far, man.
Yeah.
So let me ask you what your thoughts are about what the biggest thing is that you think is that hold people back.
Yeah. And some of this gets to my Christian faith. I won't go too heavy into that, but it's hard to, totally avoid that because it's part of my identity, obviously.
Of course.
It is my identity. But
this show is about being you, man. Just be you.
Yeah. I think that, and nothing that I'm going to say am I immune to. In some cases, I'm wildly guilty of it. But I think that this fear of failure thing, which to one degree or another is universal. Now, some people may have sort of an unrecognizably small amount of fear of failure. Others might be racked by it. But regardless of how much, I think we all have it to a degree. And I think the problem becomes that if work and career and success and your bank account balance really define who you are, then jeopardizing any of that is an existential threat to you, and you won't do it. In other words, you'll take fewer risks. If having that money in the bank or having any kind of job, just being a worker bee, it defines who you are, then you're less likely to take risk, and your fear of failure will be that much more debilitating. So one of the things my Christian faith has helped me with, and I should say is helping, because you're never there, but one of the things it's helping me with is recognizing those times in my life when I fall into the trap of letting my career and my paycheck define who I am and be my identity. That's like building your house on a foundation of sand. And the minute a storm comes along, well, actually it has two problems. There's two issues with it. The first is that if you define yourself by your work and your income, and you have a bad year, let's say, then your identity is, you're just devastated. And that's a hard thing to deal with. If you define yourself by your work and your income and you're doing okay, but you'll be less likely to take risks because you don't want to rock the boat. So there's two big problems with that. I think that's what holds people back more than anything else. There are some other things too, but that would be the primary thing. I think secondarily, I've been reading some stuff from Dale Carnegie on this. He simply said way back when that lifestyle can undermine the most capable of all of us. I know you've been sober for a period of time. I've been thinking a lot about my alcohol consumption, not because I'm drinking too much, but as you get older, it affects your brain. And I think that lifestyle considerations are another thing that hold people back. So fear of failure and lifestyle considerations are another big thing. Those are the two things I see most often that hold otherwise very capable people back from being successful.
Yeah, and those are probably two of the most prominent ones, man. I think that's a. I think that, in mentioning Dale Carnegie, here we are in 2017, where concepts and principles have been carried through for centuries. I mean, honest to God, I believe that. Everybody's experience is their own, as I've said before. But if we could just stick to the fundamentals and the basics, if you're an athlete, right? You're a basketball fan. Yeah. What's the first thing that you do or you see the players doing when they go into the gym for practice? They're starting with the fundamentals, right? Dribble the basketball. Yeah, sure. Right? Right. Shooting a free throw. In baseball, it's catching and it's hitting. I mean, pitching and catching, right? It's like, and in life, it's much the same. So if we could just figure out what those fundamentals are and learn to apply those in our lives, I think that the boat doesn't rock as much as you said. And so it's a big deal, man. It's such a big deal. So what do you think is the biggest misconception? You're in Wall Street. That's been your life for the longest of time. What do you think is the biggest misconception about building wealth that people have? What do you think that they don't know that you do because you've been around it, you've seen it? And it's a big word, right? We talk about health, wealth, love, and happiness. It's one of the 4 pillars, in my opinion. Yeah. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think 3 things. And one of them isn't just about building wealth, it's about career development. But there's two common factors. Let's back up and say, if for right now, all we care about is just making the most money possible. In my industry, in finance, in investing, there are a lot of common threads that run through the guys that have been the most successful. So, but two of them are that they focused their energy and their efforts and ultimately their money on one or two big ideas. I feel like Reid was talking about a Frogger analogy where he was skipping back and forth different ideas, and I may be mischaracterizing, but when he said that, I realized that I totally disagree. At least in terms of sheer topic of making the most money possible, I see it all the time where it really takes one or two really good ideas. Another way to skin the cat would be to have 50 mediocre ideas. But I've noticed the guys that make serious money, real wealth creation, hit on one or two really powerful ideas and then throw everything they have, and again, by that I mean money, emotional intensity, and time, into that one or two ideas, and they get focused. Right. Warren Buffett, in 1962 or 3, when he was starting out, when he was a nobody, his first big investment was American Express, a little company back then. And he invested 60% of his net worth in American Express stock. So he didn't invest 5% of it or dip his toe, or he after a lot of work, a lot of research, it wasn't just a blind bet, but after running his process and doing his hard work, he put over half of his net worth into one business. And so that's just one of many examples I could cite where people found, and maybe they were patient, maybe they didn't swing at every pitch, but once they found they still wanted to hit, they picked it and they focused on that. So the first thing about wealth building, I think, is whether it's picking a career or investing or starting a business or whatever it is you're doing, is to try and find one or two good ideas and really have a laser focus on that. And I guess the second thing is that I forgot the second factor about building wealth. Well, I forgot. Well,
that's all right, man. No, take your time, brother. Take your time. All right. Well, let's, if it comes back to you, feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to that one. In the meantime, let me ask you this, man. What do you think are the top 3 skills that make you the right man for the job that you're doing today? Yeah.
One misconception, not about wealth building, but about Wall Street and investing in general, is that, I think some people picture sort of these math geeks from MIT who have a formula and they go and they can make $1 billion. I think one of the many reasons why investing is such a fascinating field is that there is a ton of right brain emotional intelligence that one has to bring to bear to make a career of it. If all it were about were just sheer intellectual wattage and brain power, then pretty much every MIT engineering grad would be a successful investor. And that is not the case. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that's brought to bear. There's a lot of people skills, a lot of communication skills, a lot of reading the situation, in addition to all the core financial analytics that we do. And so I think that, I went to a state school. I had a 3.0. My educational pedigree is very middle of the road. But I think that some of those softer right brain skills I've brought to bear to be successful in my field. And I think it's an encouraging thing for your listeners if they're interested in investing. You don't have to be, a Princeton grad with a 4.0 and a physics major. I think this is a field that is, because it's a meritocracy, it rewards people who do well and it punishes people who don't do well. And it doesn't care about your background and pedigree. It just cares about your ability to deliver the goods. So what I've been able to do well, I think, is harness right brain emotional skills. I think I've been able to network effectively. I know you and I met. I mean, everywhere I go, I treat everyone I meet as if they're the next president of the United States. I mean, right. You don't ever know if your Uber driver owns 17 laundromats or something. I just think you meet people. You and I met in the context of a nightclub, but if you get a sense of people's energy and intelligence and enthusiasm, cultivating that is a thing that can never hurt you, and it'll pay dividends in ways you might not appreciate. So I would say the other thing I've done well is just basically physically showing up and cultivating a network of people that end up helping me out down the road. My partner today was a friend of my old roommate, things like that. So I think I've done those two things well. And then, like I said, lastly is in our business, managing risk is a big deal. Managing risk, though, in any business involves managing your emotions around that risk. And so I've spent a lot of time reading a lot of psychology and performance optimization books, particularly a lot of sports psychology books about how, say, a track athlete clears his mind before a sprint, or a professional golfer, calms his mind before a big putt. That literature, I think, is applicable to business in general. If you just change putting to investing, or put your business verb in there in exchange for the sports word, you can get a lot out of sports performance psychology literature on how to manage your emotions throughout your career. And that's the last thing I've done is try to learn how to harness and guard against my emotions. And so I think that's a lesson people can apply in any business.
Right. I think there's a lot of different ways to use messages, subliminal messages, and apply them to your life. Draw on your personal experience, right? Think about what you've been through, what you know, where you've come from. And certainly once you open up your mind to learning again, you become in a zone where, the ideas just start to flow in, right? I mean, it's never ending from that point.
Exactly.
So, because we're talking about investments, I want to know what the best investment is that you've ever made in yourself.
That's a great question. What is the best investment in myself? The best investment in myself. I would say if you came to my apartment, I have a very big library, and I hate to keep being the drum on this reading thing, but I own a lot of books, and I actually did the math the other day about how much money I've thrown into these books, and I think investing in your ongoing continuing education always pays dividends. So I would say just not only buying the books, but demanding that I carve out the time to read them is the best investment. I mean, if you think about reading, you use a great word. A lot of people view it as a chore. One area where reading indeed does have an opportunity cost is it's 2 hours you could be doing something else in terms of maybe going out and working and making money. So that's an investment, just sitting down to read. So I would say being mindful of a continuing education approach, making sure that every week I'm doing something to expand my mental horizon is probably the best investment I made of myself.
That's excellent, man. I get it. And to your point about the opportunity cost, I think that it's burnt most times, and people, they choose to instead watch TV, right, where there's really nothing. They've had a long day. It's TV. It's later on the house, and do absolutely zero to improve themselves. And so it's wasted. It really is.
Yeah, I think we all do, to one degree or another. We all do things just to fill time sometimes. I think we're guilty of it to one degree or another. And so I think it's helpful to just be mindful of, am I doing this activity for a purpose, or am I just filling to get to point A, from point A to point B? I'm amazed when I look, when I'm critical of myself and I'm honest, that there are periods of time where you just, like you said, you burn time. You just sort of you're filling the airtime to get to the next thing. That's not, if we're talking about success, that's not helpful.
Right. I'll be honest with you. Time has become my biggest motivator. Yeah. I wake up, and if I'm ever at a point where I'm thinking, I'm not going to do this right now, or it's not the right time, I think about how quickly time has elapsed. For example, I just turned 31. To like 21 was yesterday, right? That's 10 years, snap, just like that, gone. And I know it's not going to be any different to 41 to 51 to 61. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be the guy that's at 51 thinking, I wish I would have did that. I kind of have a regret now. No. And so the minute that I have that thought, oh man, it's on. And now it's like, it's more of a permanent feeling because I don't really have that battle anymore. But when I'm in doubt, because I'm human, right? We do have that, and we've got to learn to deal with it. But that's it, man. It's like time. The clock is ticking. It's not slowing down.
It is. That's exactly right. I'm 44. I'm going to tell you, the rate of acceleration only picks up.
Right. Yes.
Things are moving quickly. So, but Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, that can be a very good motivator in the short term to get you going again. And when you, I think we got to be realistic. We're good. It ebbs and flows, but when you're on one of your kind of down moments, that's one of the many ways that you're right. You can get back up and get going again.
Right.
So.
We're almost finished, man. I got a couple more questions.
Sure.
I do want to ask you, because we asked you the question of what's the best investment you've ever made in yourself. I want to ask the same question, but I want to say, what's the best investment you've ever made in somebody else?
Yeah. My philosophy on sort of talent evaluation and human resources in general is we like to hire people who are poor, smart, and hungry.
Yes.
And I think it's obvious why that's helpful. They come in with little pretense. They come in with lots of motivation. And they come in with some ability, i.e. the smart piece. So, I think that in particular, I won't name him, but we had one analyst who we hired who was ended up being very raw and junior when he first joined, but as a result, we were able to invest in him and invest in time molding him, and he became a very productive resource for us and a great partner on the team. So there's just one guy in particular that I hired, and I think that in general, our record is checkered in this area. We often are not great at the talent evaluation part, and even when we get it right and pick the right person, we often don't make sure we carve out time to invest in that person. And in this case, we did, and we hit it out of the park. So it gets back to what I'll do differently in the new firm. I would like to hire young, impressionable people who haven't formed views of the world yet, but who have a reason to want to work hard and have some raw talent, and really invest the time up front in shaping them with the understanding that the payout from that's going to be down the road. You're not going to get a payout, and that's not all easy for people all the time. But I think you have to appreciate that the payout will be a geometric payout in a hockey stick shaped graph down the road. And that'd be the best investment I've ever made in a person. Yeah.
And what you said earlier too about your comment right there, and I pick up my phone for that reason. It's instant gratification.
Yeah.
We live with, you press a button, social media, you can post a photo and you're instantly getting likes, right? People are like, oh, I like that. And people are getting this feeling. It's like, and they hold on to that. And then when it comes to our work life, we want overnight success.
Yeah, that's
right.
We
want it today, and we're not willing to put in the work for it. So there's no reason to embrace the delayed gratification. So then we have the younger group of people who are my age, my generation, that feel entitled. And if we don't get it right away, then we're pissed off and we just quit, and then we move to the next thing, right? That's the way we end up becoming. And it's kind of, it's not discouraging, but it kind of sucks. And that's kind of like what the mission is here, right? Let's get people back to what it's like to be a human being, understand what work ethic is, and survival, and persistence and consistency. I mean, golly, man, it's why I do it with this show, man, to be honest with you. I really like to get messages like yours out there because you never know who you're touching.
Yeah, exactly. I feel very strong. I don't want to sound like a fuddy-duddy. I mean, I'm 44, but I really think this smartphone thing, and I probably wouldn't feel this strongly if I didn't have the personal case study of my sabbatical to draw upon, where I really saw a change even in my brain. And I just think that this generation you're talking about, every like creates a small dopamine rush in their head. And that's a chemical reaction. It's a hormonal thing. And you're right. It does extend to all phases of their life. And so I just, again, want to just sort of emphasize to your listeners just to think about how you relate to that smartphone. The smartphone is a great thing. It does so much for us, but think about the drawbacks and the ways you use it, and just be thoughtful, and just learn from my experience taking 8 weeks on the beach in the jungle of Belize that your brain can work differently and better if you're able to regulate the use of that thing. I really feel strongly about that.
And it's coming from a person that has created massive financial success, massive business success, personal success. And so I think sometimes people that are listening, want to hear that from somebody who's got the success, right? Why would I listen to you? Because I've done it, right? And I'm telling you right now that I've got all this, but yet I still need this. This part is so important.
Yeah.
And so take the information that you're being told and use it now when you're 22, 25, 27, and help yourself out, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly right. That's well said.
Dude, I want to take a minute to acknowledge you, brother, for really, man. And this goes back, you know, again, we were trying to figure out the time. We'll have to go do some deep research.
Yeah.
2010 or 11.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
When we first met. But you again, we're just a stand-up guy, and that hasn't changed. And I feel like we were connected for a reason. And you know, getting to know you throughout the years and having you, you know, be an example for me. Certainly I've looked up to you. That's why I've tried reaching out to you and staying in touch with you. I'm so grateful for you to be here today, sharing your insight, your wisdom, and really setting the example for other people as well in terms of business and financial life and also personal life as well. And I'm glad that we could do this. You're a rock star, man. I love your authenticity, dude. I love that. Yeah. And certainly, one more, hold on a second. I'm not done with you, man. Just give me a second. Certainly your ability to open up today and be vulnerable about your sabbatical and as a leader, not thinking that you know everything and being aware that you have some weaknesses and that you need some places and some things to improve upon. That's priceless, man. That's priceless.
I appreciate that.
And you know, we learn from you, and I want you to know that.
So Reid, until your head hurts, show up physically, find a mentor that wants to invest in you, and think about why you're doing what you're doing, not just what and how. And I think things will work out.
Well, I think you just answered my last and final question, which would have been, what's your one? Well, I actually have two, but I think if I ask you this question now, I think that might have been it. But what's your one message of inspiration?
I made some notes here, so I took this pretty seriously. I do think just cultivating that intellectual curiosity, which I choose to do through reading a lot, physically showing up wherever, whatever it is, just show up there. Seek out a mentor. One is good, but I guess a mastermind group like Greg Reid is better. And then never try and spend some time cultivating a thought about why you're doing what you're doing, not just what and how. Because I think that last piece will go a long way toward getting over your fear of failure and taking risks. And the reason why that's happening is because you're not defining yourself by your work. So that's my kind of headline, those four things. And also get enough sleep.
Yeah.
The brain works better when you sleep a lot, and I learned that on my sabbatical as well. So I'll end with that.
And Lars, the thing too, man, is your method is not right or wrong, and Greg's is not right or wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and what somebody might hear, it might work for them. That mastermind thing, and then it might be the guy who it doesn't work for, right? Exactly. So it's like, try it out, figure what works for you. If it doesn't, let it slip to the fingertips and go on to the next one. Yeah,
I liked his sand idea. That's a good way. That's a good way of doing what I said earlier, which is follow your passion, but check in to see if it's working out. You know, if you're tailored to that. I guess to me, the sand and the hand thing is a good way of giving a metaphor behind that check-in process. Okay, so I'm passionate about real estate, but checking in to see, I may be passionate about it, but am I really tailored to it? And that's a good way to think about it. So I liked his podcast. I'm gonna listen to a few more of yours and see what else I can learn.
Listen to the Eric Burns one, man. That's my favorite.
Okay, we'll do.
Wow. So my last question, man, and this is it. It's the end of the day. You ran your race. You're 120 years old now because it's modern day. It's modern day medicine. You're probably going to live to be that old. We're getting ready to read your eulogy.
Right.
We're getting ready to read your eulogy. What do you want it to say about the life you've lived, man? What you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I heard you ask some other guys this legacy question. Maybe it's time for me to think more about that, but at 44, I haven't really thought about that. I still think of myself as sort of a post-collegiate sort of mover and shaker, working my butt off, with something approaching a tunnel vision. I will say, if I take my own advice and I spend time thinking about why I'm doing something, that naturally leads into a thought about your legacy. But I'll just tell you, at 44, I haven't really spent much emotional energy on that question. And, you know, when I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing, it naturally bleeds into a thought about that.
Sure.
So maybe next time we do this podcast, I'll have it for you.
And 100%, man. We'll do a second one without a doubt, dude. I think I honestly, I didn't even realize how fast the time was going until I just looked and I'm like, holy crap, it goes so fast.
Yeah.
So we'll have plenty more, man. We'll bring you up for a second, a third, a fourth. Again, man, thank you for being honest and upfront, authentic, man. You're a rock star, brother. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And we'll stay connected and continue the conversation, man.
Good. Godspeed.
All
Take
right,
care.
brother. You got it, man. Thank you.